Hello everyone. Now we're going to be covering the accessory skin structures and the functions. So let's see what this is about. All the accessory skin structures, they're organs that will develop from the embryonic epidermis. This is why they are considered accessory structures of the skin. There are three types. We have the hair, the skin glands, and the nails, and we will be covering them in more details in the next few slides. The presence of hair is one of the characteristics of all mammals. If the hair is dense and covers most of the body surface, it will then be called a fur. In humans, hair is found everywhere on the skin except for the palms, the soles, the lips, the nipples, and part of the external genitalia and distal portions of fingers and toes. During development, hair will change color and also structure. The lanugo is a delicate, unpigmented hair that appears during the 5th and 6th month of fetal development. This is why premature babies are hairy due to the presence of the lanugo. Near the time of birth, the lanugo will get replaced by what is called the terminal hair. And this terminal hair will be present in the scalp, the eyelids, and the eyebrows. The terminal hair in these areas are going to be longer, coarser, or in other words, rougher, and they're also going to be pigmented. In the rest of the body, it gets replaced by short, fine, and usually unpigmented hair, which is called the vellus hair. At puberty, the terminal hair will start to replace the vellus hair, especially in the pubic and axillary regions, which is underneath the armpit. For the rest of the body, it will vary among individuals. However, men do have more terminal hair in the chest, legs, and arms than females, in addition to men having appearance of terminal hair on the face to form the beard. These changes in hair type at puberty are universal unless there is a genetic disorder, and it will have biological significance. We can say that the beard in men, for example, and the appearance of pubic and axillary hair in men and also in women are visible signs of sexual maturity. In addition, the presence of hair in the pubic region and on the axilla may function as a means for spreading odors that are produced by secretions of specialized glands. And these odors serve as an important tool to attract a mate or a partner. I know that this might sound a little disgusting, but the smells that our bodies produce, which are called pheromones, will affect our behavior towards others in a way that it will either attract or repel a partner. We can say that pheromones are a hidden form of communication in humans, as they send signals from one individual to another, of the same species. And this will trigger a response in the individual receiving those signals, such as a hormonal change or a specific behavior, which can either be positive or negative, hopefully positive. In addition, it has been suggested that pubic hair will protect against abrasion during intercourse, and that the axillary hair will reduce the friction when the arms move against the body, let's say when you're running. With regards to hair structure, each hair is going to be composed of columns of dead keratinized epidermal cells that are bonded together by extracellular proteins. The hair is actually divided into three parts, which is the shaft, the root, and the hair follicle. The hair shaft is the superficial portion of the hair. Most of it will project from the surface of the skin, but it does start beneath the surface of the skin, as you can see here on this image. The shape of the shaft of the hairs will vary with different ethnic groups. It can go from straight to wavy and to curly. Next, we have the hair root, which is the portion of the hair that's deep to the shaft that will penetrate into the dermis and even sometimes into the subcutaneous layer, as you can see here on this image. The shaft, together with the root, will both consist of 3 concentric circles. The inner circle is what we call the medulla, The middle layer is what we call the cortex, and the outer layer is the cuticle. Of the three layers, the cortex is the major part of the shaft, and it will consist these elongated cells that contain pigment granules in dark hair, but mostly air spaces between the cells and gray hair. Surrounding the root of the hair is what we call the hair follicle, which is made up of an external root sheath and also an internal root sheath. The external root sheath is a downward continuation of the epidermis, and near the surface of the skin, it will contain all of the epidermal layers, meaning that the external root sheath will contain the stratum basale, the stratum spinosum, the stratum granulosum, and the stratum corneum. It won't contain the stratum lucidum because remember, stratum lucidum is just present in thick skin, and in thick skin we don't have hair, so it does not make sense for us to have the stratum lucidum as part of the epidermal layers. At the base of the hair follicle, the external root sheath will only contain the stratum basale. Now, the internal root sheath is composed by the hair matrix, and this hair matrix is made up of germinal layer of cells which will arise from the stratum basale, which is the site of cell division. Remember that the stratum basale is where you're going to find stem cells. Therefore, the hair matrix is where you're going to have the cell division. This means that the hair matrix cells are the ones that are responsible for the growth of the existing hairs, and they will produce new hairs when old hairs are shed. This replacement process occurs within the same follicle, and the hair matrix cells also give rise to the cells of the internal root sheath. So we can say that the internal root sheath is produced by the hair matrix, and it will form a cellular tubular sheath of epithelium between the external root sheath and the hair. Together, the external and internal root sheaths are referred to as epithelial root sheath. The dense dermis surrounding their hair follicle, it will be called the dermal root sheath. On the base of each hair follicle and its surrounding dermal root sheath is an onion-shaped structure that's called the bulb. This structure will house what we call the hair papilla, which will contain many blood vessels that will be used to nourish the growing hair follicle. The bulb will also contain the hair matrix, which is formed by this germinal layer of cells, which we talked about already, which will be the site for cell division. And look how our body is so smart that the site of cell division is where you're also going to find lots of blood vessels to nourish these cells that are important to create new cells and to make your hair grow. This image here shows us a close-up of the cuticle, which is made up of the single cell layer of cells that contain hard keratin. And the edges of the cuticle cells, they overlap like shingles on a roof or like the snake's skin. Normally, we can lose up to 100 hairs per day. In some cases, there's extensive hair loss that may occur, but the hair growth may return, such as occurs in patients that receive certain types of chemotherapy treatments. The loss of hair receives a medical term that's called alopecia, and there are several types of alopecia. Alopecia areata, which is described here, is going to be this autoimmune disease where a person's immune system is going to attack the body, in this case the hair follicles, and when this happens, the person's hair begins to fall out, often in clumps, the size and shape of a quarter, but the extent of the hair loss varies, and in some cases it is only in a few spots. In others, the hair loss can be greater, and on rare occasions, the person can lose all of their hair on the head or even in the entire body. But it is believed that the person's genetic makeup may trigger the autoimmune reaction to alopecia areata, along with sometimes viruses or a substance that the person comes in contact with. It's an unpredictable disease. In some cases, the hair may grow back and then it falls out, but in other cases, they may never grow back again. And this is just showing you what happens where the hair follicle is going to die because there's not enough blood supply to supply the hair follicle with nutrients. The skin has several types of glands that secrete its contents onto its surface. However, not all are functional in all individuals, like the mammary glands are a type of skin gland that are normally only functional in lactating women. The major glands of the skin are the sebaceous glands and the sweat glands, but we also have the ceruminous glands and, like I said, the mammary glands. All of these are exocrine glands, meaning that they will secrete their content onto the surface or to the lumen through a duct. So let's talk about these 4 different types of glands on the next slides. First, let's talk about the sebaceous glands, which are the simple or compound alveolar glands that produce sebum, which is an oily white substance that's rich in lipids. Because the sebum is released by the lysis and death of secretory cells, sebaceous glands are classified as holocrine glands. We did see this in Module 2, but just to revise, here is what happens. You're going to have mature cells that will die because the whole cytoplasm erupts, releasing the contents. And that's how the sebaceous glands release their contents. Most sebaceous glands release their secretions into the upper part of their hair follicle, like we can see over here, through this sebaceous gland duct. This oily substance, once it is secreted onto the hair and surrounding skin, it will prevent things like dryness, and it will also protect against some bacteria growth. A few sebaceous glands, they're not associated with hairs, and they're located in the lips, the eyelids, and the genitalia, and the products will be released directly onto the skin surface. But notice how this example here on the image, because the sebaceous gland is located in the dermis, then the contents need to be secreted through the sebaceous gland duct, and from there, that's how it gets to the surface. Sweat glands are also called sudoriferous glands. There are 2 types. We have the ecrine and the apocrine. Ecrine can also be called merocrine glands, which will release their contents through the merocrine type of secretion, which we saw in Module 2, which just means that they will secrete their contents through exocytosis through these secretory vesicles seen here. This is the most common type of sweat gland. As you can see from this image, they are simple, coiled, tubular glands that open directly onto the surface of the skin through these openings called sweat pores. Therefore, the products will travel from the gland through these long ducts, passes through the sweat pore onto the surface of the skin. The secretory product will be made of an isotonic fluid that is mostly water, but also contains some salts, which is mainly sodium chloride, and small amounts also of ammonia, urea, uric acid, and lactic acid. Sweat is released when the body temperature starts to increase above normal, which will allow it to evaporate into the environment, and this will cool the body. In addition, sweat can also be released in the palm, soles, and axilla, and it's usually as a result of emotional stress. In apocrine sweat glands, you would think that it would secrete its contents through the apocrine method of secretion, which means that the apical part of the cytoplasm gets released together with the secretory vesicles, as seen on this image. However, since the nucleus stays intact, the cells do not die. This is really not the case, as there are studies that now show that this gland also releases its contents in a merocrine fashion, and possibly some holocrine fashion as well. Don't let this type of gland trick you into thinking that there is only one mode of secretion. These apocrine sweat glands, they have the same morphology as the eccrine. Therefore, they are simple, coiled, tubular glands, as you can see over here, that usually open into a hair follicle that's superficial to the opening of the sebaceous glands, as we see here on this image. These glands, they're found in the axilla and genitalia, more specifically in the scrotum of males, and the homologous structure in females, which is the labia majora, and also around the anus. Unlike the eccrine sweat glands, these apocrine sweat glands do not help to regulate body temperature. These glands, they become active at puberty as a result for sex hormones being produced in males and females. Their secretions will be similar to eccrine, but more viscous because they will contain lipids and proteins. This fluid is essentially odorless, meaning that it has no smell, but once in contact with natural bacteria in our body, they will cause what we commonly know as BO, or body odor. And there we go again, our pheromones. The ceruminous glands are modified eccrine glands that are located in the ear canal, which is the structure right over here, and it will produce cerumen, which is earwax, together with the sebaceous glands. In other words, the ceruminous glands and the sebaceous glands present in the hairs of the ear canal will produce cerumen. This cerumen and the hair will protect the tympanic membrane, which is the structure right over here, also called the eardrum, by preventing dirt and small insects from going deep into the ear canal. However, accumulation of cerumen can block the ear canal and make hearing more difficult, as it restricts the tympanic membrane from vibrating. Some individuals, they produce more cerumen than others, and the best way to remove the cerumen is actually to go to a specialist. In other words, using a Q-tip is actually the worst thing that you can do to clean your ear canal, as you will actually be pushing the cerumen inwards towards the tympanic membrane instead of removing it. Lastly, we have here the mammary glands that are modified apocrine sweat glands that are going to be located in breasts. They will produce milk, usually after childbirth. This process will be discussed in more details when we go over reproductive system in anatomy and physiology too. And therefore, right now, this is all you need to know about mammary glands. This slide is here to give you a summary of most of the skin glands that we were talking about, except for the mammary glands, which we really will only cover when we get to the reproductive system. The last skin accessory structure that we're going to be talking about are the nails. The nails are going to be plates of this tightly packed, hard, dead, keratinized epidermal cells. The cells form this clear, very solid covering over the dorsal surface of the distal portion of the digits. Each nail is going to consist of three main structures, which is the nail body, which can also be called a plate, a free edge, and the nail root. The nail body is this visible portion of the nail. It's going to be comparable to the stratum corneum of the epidermis of the skin. Remember that it was the last layer of the epidermis. But in this case, its flat keratinized cells fill with a harder type of keratin, and the cells are not going to be shedding like they do on the epidermis. Most of the nail body actually appears pink because there's the blood that's flowing through this underlining capillaries. The free edge is the part of the nail body that may extend past the distal end of the digits if you don't bite your nails, or if you trim them and keep them short. But if you don't, then you can have a part that will extend past the distal end of the digit. The free edge is going to be white because there are no underlining capillaries. The last part of the nail is what we call the nail root, which is the part of the nail that is actually buried in a fold of skin. The whitish crescent-shaped area of the proximal end of the nail body, which is this portion right over here, is what we call the lunula. Lunula means moon, and that's what it looks like. It looks like a little crescent moon. It appears whitish because this thickened stratum basale in this area does not allow the vascular tissue that's underneath to show through. That's why it looks white. Beneath the free edge is this thickened region of stratum corneum that's called the hyponychium. Hypo means below, and nychium means nail. So it makes sense that the hyponychium is going to be below the nail. It is going to be the junction between the free edge and the skin of the fingertip, and this will secure the nail to the fingertip. The nail bed is going to be the skin below the nail plate that will extend all the way from the lunula to the hyponychium. An interesting fact about the epidermis of the nail bed is that it actually lacks the stratum granulosum. Then we have here the eponychium, where epo means above and nychium means nail, or also called the cuticle, which is this narrow band of epidermis that will extend from and adheres to the margin of the nail wall. It will occupy this proximal border of the nail and consists of the stratum corneum. You might be surprised to know that the hangnail has nothing to do with the nail itself. It's actually made up of a small torn piece of eponychium that has dried up on the side of the nail. The nails do have a few functions besides scratching various parts of your body. They will serve to protect the distal end of your fingertips or the digits, and they will also provide support and counter pressure to the palmar surface of the fingers, and in this way they will enhance the touch perception and the manipulation of objects. In addition, they allow you to grasp and manipulate small objects when you do it with your fingertips.